I remember the day my parents sat me down in our living room like it was yesterday. I was 7, wearing my favorite purple dress with butterflies, clutching my worn teddy bear as Mom and Dad explained they wouldn't be living together anymore. They were so calm about it. No screaming, no throwing things, just two adults who'd fallen out of love, deciding to go their separate ways. I didn't cry. Maybe I was too young to really understand what was happening. They divided everything so neatly. The house went to Mom, Dad moved into a new apartment, and I got 2 bedrooms. The custody arrangement was simple, 1 week with Mom, 1 week with Dad. And Dad, being Dad, made sure Mom and I were well taken care of financially. About a year after the divorce, Dad met Sarah. I still remember the first time he introduced us at a local diner. She had kind eyes and a warm smile, and her son Tommy was sitting next to her, playing with his French fries. "Hi Brittany," Sarah said, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Your dad's told me so much about you." Tommy looked up from his plate. "Are you gonna be my sister?" I liked them immediately. Sarah didn't try too hard or act fake nice like some of Dad's previous dates. She was just real. And Tommy, who was 3 years younger than me, became the brother I never had. Around the same time, Mom started dating Richard. He moved in pretty quickly, and I noticed Mom seemed different, distracted, always touching her stomach when she thought no one was looking. They got married in a small ceremony at City Hall, and 2 months later, my half-sister Emily was born. I remember standing in the hospital room, looking at this tiny pink bundle in Mom's arms. Richard was hovering over them both, completely absorbed. I stood in the corner, shifting from foot to foot, feeling like I was watching a family portrait being painted, one that didn't include me. Dad and Sarah got married that same year. Their wedding was different, they made sure Tommy and I felt included in everything. Sarah even let me help pick out her dress, and during the ceremony, Dad made sure to include special vows to both Tommy and me. "Today I'm not just gaining a wife," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm gaining another child to love, and our 2 amazing kids are gaining a bigger family." That night, as Sarah tucked me into bed in my room at their house, she kissed my forehead and said, "You know, Brittany, I always wanted a daughter. Thank you for letting me be part of your life." I hugged her tight, already knowing that while my family situation wasn't typical, I was lucky to have at least one home where I truly belonged. Life at Mom's house changed after Emily was born. It wasn't anything dramatic, no harsh words or cruel treatment. It was more like I was slowly fading into the background, becoming a ghost in my own home. Mom quit her job to become a full-time housewife, and everything began revolving around Emily. At first, I tried to tell myself it was normal. Of course a baby needs more attention. But as the months passed, the forgetting started. Little things at first, then bigger ones. I remember standing outside school in the rain, watching other kids leave with their parents after the parent-teacher conference. Mrs. Johnson, my 4th grade teacher, waited with me for almost an hour before calling Mom. "Oh God, was that today?" Mom's voice crackled through the phone. "I'm so sorry, I was at Emily's Mommy and Me class. Can we reschedule?" We never did reschedule. Richard just picked me up that day, barely glancing at me as he drove home, talking on his phone about work the whole time. Then came my 10th birthday. I woke up excited, running downstairs, expecting at least a happy birthday from Mom. Instead, I found her cooing over Emily in the kitchen. "Mom," I said, hovering by the doorway. "Do you know what day it is?" She looked up, distracted. "Tuesday? Oh, I need to take Emily to her doctor's appointment." I stood there, my heart sinking. "It's my birthday." "Oh," her eyes widened. "Oh, Brittany, I'm so sorry." We'll celebrate this weekend, okay? I just have so much going on today with Emily's checkup." But the weekend came and went, and no one mentioned my birthday again. It became easier to spend time at Dad's house. Sarah always made sure my favorite snacks were in the pantry, and Tommy and I would spend hours playing video games or doing homework together. Dad never missed a single school event, and Sarah often came too, taking pictures and beaming like I was her own daughter. I started spending more and more time there. A few days turned into weeks, then months. Mom barely seemed to notice. When I was at her house, she was always busy with Emily, feeding her, playing with her, taking her to playdates. Richard would come home from work, kiss Emily on the forehead, and retreat to his home office. Sometimes I wondered if they'd even notice if I disappeared completely. After about 6 months of me basically living at Dad's full-time, he decided to make it official. "I called your mom today," he told me one evening. "I think it makes sense for you to live here permanently. You're already here most of the time anyway, and I told her I'd stop the alimony payments since I'm taking care of you full-time now." Within hours, Mom was at the door, all worried looks and loving words. "Sweetie, I've missed you so much," she said, hugging me for the first time in what felt like forever. "I've been thinking about everything, and I want us to go back to our original arrangement. I want you home with me half the time, like before." I was 12 by then, old enough to see through it. The sudden concern, the promises to do better, it wasn't about missing me. It was about the money. Dad's alimony checks were the real reason she wanted me back. Emily was 5 when she started rubbing it in my face. She'd follow me around the house with this smug little smile, dropping her bombs when Mom and Richard weren't within earshot. "Daddy says you're not really part of our family," she told me one day while I was doing homework at the kitchen table. "He says you're just visiting." I tried to ignore her, focusing on my math problems, but she kept going. "Mommy and Daddy love me more than you. Last night, Daddy told Mommy he was tired of you being here. And Mommy said just wait until you turn 18, then the money stops and you'll be gone." It hurt, of course it did. But I'd learned to build walls around that pain. I had Dad and Sarah, who showed me what real family love looked like. I had Tommy, who was more of a sibling to me than Emily would ever be. Still, hearing your own mother basically counting down the days until she didn't have to deal with you anymore, that leaves scars. The years crawled by until finally, I made it to high school graduation. I sat between my two families during the ceremony, Dad, Sarah, and Tommy on one side, Mom, Richard, and Emily on the other. It felt like sitting between two different worlds. After the ceremony, Dad hugged me tight. "We're so proud of you, Princess." Meanwhile, Mom and Richard were already talking about my departure before we even left the school parking lot. "So," Richard said, jingling his car keys, "have you started packing yet?" They didn't ask about my college plans. Didn't care that I'd gotten into the business program with a partial scholarship. Didn't even pretend to be interested in my future. They just wanted to know when I'd be out of their hair. 2 weeks later, I moved my things to Dad's house. I remember sitting in his living room, nervous about asking for help with college expenses even though I knew he'd never refuse. "Dad, I got accepted to the financial analyst program," I said, playing with the acceptance letter in my hands. "I got a partial scholarship, but..." Before I could finish, Dad and Sarah exchanged glances and smiled. "We've already got it covered, honey," Sarah said, pulling out a folder. "We've been saving for your college fund since you were 8. I spent that summer working at the Silver Spoon Cafe, saving every penny I could. My shifts were mostly morning ones, which left my afternoons free to spend time with my real family. Tommy and I would go to movies, Sarah taught me to cook proper meals for when I'd be living in the dorm, and Dad, well, Dad just kept being Dad, always there with advice or a hug when I needed one. Mom never called to ask about my plans. Never stopped by to see how I was doing. Never seemed to care that her oldest daughter was about to leave for college. But by then, I'd stopped expecting her to care. College life started in a blur of new faces and experiences. My dorm room was tiny but cozy, and my roommate Jenny was nice enough, though we never became close friends. Between classes and my job at the campus cafe, I barely had time to breathe, but I made sure to call Dad and Sarah at least twice a week. They came to visit whenever they could, and Tommy would tag along, complaining about having to carry my laundry basket but always bringing me my favorite snacks from home. Mom never called. Not once. My 19th birthday came and went without even a text message from her. I shouldn't have checked my phone that day, shouldn't have hoped, but old habits die hard. Later that night, I made the mistake of checking her Facebook page. There they were, dozens of pictures of her perfect family. Mom, Richard, and Emily at the beach. Emily's dance recitals, family dinners, holiday celebrations. Each photo carefully staged to show their happiness, each caption talking about family time and loving my family. I wasn't in any of them, of course. I'd been cropped out of their family portrait long ago. I threw myself into my studies after that, determined to prove that I didn't need their approval to succeed. The years flew by, and before I knew it, I was walking across the stage to receive my diploma in financial analysis. Dad cheered so loud you'd have thought I'd won an Olympic medal. After graduation, Sarah approached me with an opportunity. Her brother Mark ran a successful investment firm in our hometown, and she'd mentioned my academic achievements to him. The interview with Mark went well. He was professional but warm, reminding me a bit of Sarah in the way he got straight to the point while still making you feel at ease. "Your credentials are impressive," he said, reviewing my resume. "But I need to be clear, the fact that you're my sister's stepdaughter won't earn you any favors here. You'll have to prove yourself just like everyone else." "I wouldn't want it any other way," I replied. I got the job and rented a small one-bedroom apartment near the office. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I worked harder than I'd ever worked before, taking on the projects nobody else wanted, staying late to perfect financial models, developing comprehensive growth strategies for our clients. The results spoke for themselves. Client portfolios under my management showed remarkable growth. The company's revenue increased significantly, and Mark noticed. He didn't play favorites, but he did believe in rewarding good work. The bonuses and raises came because I'd earned them, not because I was family. The first thing I did with my surprise year-end bonus was buy gifts for my real family. A new golf set for Dad, who'd been using the same clubs for 15 years. A spa weekend package for Sarah, who never splurged on herself. The latest gaming console for Tommy, who was still using his old one from high school. Watching them open their gifts, seeing their genuine happiness and surprise, I felt something settle in my chest. I might have been cut out of one family photo album, but I'd found my place in a better one. After 5 years of hard work, I had a solid plan. Every month, I put away a chunk of my salary into my savings account. I'd researched the housing market thoroughly, looking for the perfect property. I wanted something modest but comfortable, maybe with a small garden. Most importantly, I wanted to make a substantial down payment to keep the monthly mortgage payments manageable. Then came the phone call that changed everything. I was at my desk, reviewing quarterly reports, when my phone lit up with a number I hadn't seen in years. "Brittany, sweetie." Mom's voice was syrupy sweet. "I've been thinking about you so much lately." I nearly dropped my coffee. 9 years of silence, and now this? "How are you, Mom?" I kept my voice neutral. "Oh, honey, I miss you." "We all do. Why don't you come over for dinner this weekend? Emily's home from college, and Richard's making his famous pot roast." Curiosity got the better of me. That Saturday, I pulled up to my old house in my new Mercedes, nothing flashy, but reliable and professional. Emily answered the door, looking me up and down with poorly concealed interest. "Nice car," she said by way of greeting. The house hadn't changed much. Same furniture, same family photos on the walls, still none of me. Mom rushed forward to hug me, acting like we'd just seen each other yesterday. "Darling, you look fantastic. So professional in that suit." "Richard, doesn't she look successful?" Richard nodded, pulling out my chair. "We heard you're doing very well at Mark's company. The family grapevine says you're one of their top performers." Throughout dinner, they peppered me with questions about my job, my salary, my car. Mom kept mentioning how expensive everything was these days, especially with Emily in college. "That's such a beautiful watch," Mom commented, reaching for my wrist. "Must have cost a fortune." I smiled politely. It was a birthday gift from Dad and Sarah. Of course it was, she said, her smile tightening slightly. They always did spoil you. That dinner turned into more invitations. Suddenly, Mom wanted to be part of my life again. She'd call regularly, stop by my apartment unannounced with Emily in tow, invite me to family dinners. Emily would wander around my modest apartment, examining everything with calculating eyes. "This place is kind of small," she commented once. "I thought you made good money." I kept my responses vague. "It suits my needs." Mom would chime in, "But surely you're planning to upgrade soon? With your salary?" I'd just smile and change the subject. Something about their sudden interest in my life made me uneasy. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. Emily was over at my apartment, supposedly to bond with her big sister. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard her gasp from my living room. "Oh my God," she said, staring at my laptop screen. I'd left my banking app open after paying some bills. "Is that really how much money you have saved?" I quickly walked over and closed the laptop. "It's not polite to look at other people's private information, Emily." She ignored my comment. "Why are you saving so much? What's it for?" I hesitated, but figured there was no harm in telling her. "I'm planning to buy a house soon. I want to make a good down payment to keep the mortgage payments reasonable." Emily just nodded, but I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. She left shortly after, making some excuse about meeting friends. The very next day, Mom called to invite me to dinner. As soon as I sat down at their dining table, I knew something was up. Mom had that look she used to get when she was about to ask Dad for more child support. "Emily tells me you're quite the saver," she said, passing the potatoes. "That's wonderful, honey. You know, Emily's having such a hard time with college expenses. And she'll need an apartment after graduation." I took a bite of my food, saying nothing. "It would be so nice if her successful big sister could help her out," Mom continued, her voice dripping with suggestion. "Family helping family, you know?" I put down my fork. "I don't understand what you're getting at, Mom." "Oh, come on, Brittany," she said, dropping the sweet act. "You're clearly doing very well for yourself. Emily needs help with an apartment, and you have more than enough money saved up. It would be the right thing to do." I looked at her incredulously. "The right thing to do? You mean give Emily my house down payment?" "Well, you're already established in your career," Richard chimed in. "Emily's just starting out. She needs the help more than you do." "I'm not established," I said firmly. "I'm working hard and saving my money to build my own future. I'm not giving Emily my savings." Mom's face darkened. "So you're just going to let your sister struggle while you sit on a pile of money? After all we've done for you?" I almost laughed at that. "All you've done for me? Like what exactly? Forget my birthdays? Ignore me for years? Push me aside for Emily?" "You're being selfish," Richard muttered, not quite meeting my eyes. "A real sister would want to help. A real mother would have been there for both her daughters," I shot back, standing up. "I'm taking care of myself first. Emily is your responsibility, not mine." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom sat there, jaw clenched, while Richard glared at his plate. Emily wasn't at this dinner, but I could imagine her reaction when they told her later. Poor Emily, whose selfish big sister wouldn't give her a free apartment. 2 weeks after that disastrous dinner, I had to leave for a business trip to Singapore. Mark had trusted me with an important client presentation, and I'd be out of reach for most of the time due to the time difference and packed schedule. "I'll be gone for about 10 days, I told Mom when she called, trying to maintain some semblance of politeness despite our recent argument. "Just letting you know I'll be out of contact." "Oh, overseas? How nice for you," she replied, her voice oddly interested. The trip went well, but when I landed back home, my phone exploded with notifications as soon as I turned off airplane mode. Banking alerts. Dozens of them. My hands started shaking as I scrolled through them. Account transfer, $100,750. The world started spinning. I rushed home, threw open my laptop, and logged into my banking app. There it was, a massive transfer to an account I didn't recognize. But the name on the transfer: Patricia Warren, my mother's name. I drove to their house like a woman possessed, my banking app screenshots pulled up on my phone. When I pounded on their door, Richard answered with a smug look that made my blood boil. "Where is she?" I demanded, pushing past him. Mom was sitting in the living room, calm as could be, flipping through a magazine. "Oh, you're back. How was your trip?" I thrust my phone in her face. "What is this? How did you transfer money from my account?" She barely glanced at the screen. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me. It's right here, a transfer to your account." "How did you do it?" Mom finally dropped the innocent act. She put down her magazine and smiled, actually smiled. "Fine. Yes, I transferred the money. Emily needs an apartment, and you weren't being cooperative. So we helped ourselves." "How did you even get into my apartment?" My voice was shaking. "Oh, honey," she reached into her purse and held up a key. "Remember when I borrowed your bathroom that day I visited? It only takes a minute to make a copy." I felt sick to my stomach. "Give me my money back, now. Or I'm going to the police." Mom actually laughed. "Don't be ridiculous. You won't go to the police, I'm your mother. Besides, you can always save up again. You have a good job, no responsibilities. Emily needs this more than you do. We've already found her the perfect apartment." "I'm serious," I cut her off. "Return my money, or I'm..." "Or what?" Mom sneered. "You'll send your own mother to jail? Please. You don't have the spine." Richard grabbed my arm and started pushing me toward the door. "I think it's time for you to leave. This is your last chance," I warned them. "Give me back my money." Mom's only response was to wave goodbye with a smirk. Richard shoved me out onto the porch and slammed the door in my face. The police station was quiet that night. I sat across from Detective Martinez, my hand steady as I filled out the complaint form. I had everything documented: the unauthorized transfer, screenshots of the banking app, text messages with my mother about my business trip. Richard called me that same night, his voice alternating between threats and pleas. "You need to withdraw the complaint," he demanded. "Do you have any idea what you're doing to your mother? Your mother's crying." I hung up. Let her cry. I'd cried plenty of times over the years, because of her. The legal process moved surprisingly quickly. The evidence was overwhelming, and Mom's arrogant admission to the theft didn't help her case. She sat in the courtroom, playing the role of the repentant mother, tears streaming down her face as she promised to return every penny. "I just wanted to help my younger daughter," she sobbed to the judge. I let my maternal instincts cloud my judgment. I almost laughed out loud. "Maternal instincts? Since when?" The judge wasn't impressed. "Mrs. Warren, your maternal instincts led you to commit premeditated theft and fraud against your other daughter. The only reason you're not going to prison is that you've agreed to make full restitution and have no prior criminal record." She got a suspended sentence and was ordered to return my money within 30 days. I got a restraining order against both her and Richard, just to be safe. Dad and Sarah were with me through all of it. They sat behind me in court, brought me dinner when I was too exhausted to cook, and never once said "I told you so" about letting Mom back into my life. "You did the right thing," Sarah told me after the sentencing. "They needed to learn they couldn't take advantage of you anymore." Tommy, in his typical fashion, tried to lighten the mood. "Well, at least now you know for sure which family actually loves you." He was right. The lines were clear now. I had my real family: Dad, Sarah, Tommy, even Mark, who'd been incredibly supportive through the whole ordeal. And then there were the others: Mom, Richard, Emily, who'd shown their true colors in the most dramatic way possible. 6 months have passed since then. My money is back in my account, earning interest while I house hunt. I've got my eye on a lovely 3-bedroom colonial with a fenced backyard, just 10 minutes from Dad and Sarah's place. The mortgage paperwork is being processed, and this time I'm the only one with keys to my home. Mom still tries to reach out sometimes, through relatives or mutual acquaintances. She claims she's changed, that she's sorry, that she wants to make amends. But I'm done giving chances to people who see me as nothing but a resource to exploit. Yesterday, I had dinner with my real family to celebrate my upcoming house purchase. As we sat around Sarah and Dad's dining table, sharing jokes and making plans for my housewarming party, I realized something: sometimes the family you choose is better than the family you're born into. And sometimes, letting go of toxic relationships is the healthiest thing you can do for yourself. In 2 weeks, I'll be signing the papers for my new house. Dad's already planning to help me paint the walls, and Sarah's been sending me links to furniture she thinks would look perfect in my living room. This is what family should be: people who support you, love you, and would never dream of hurting you for their own gain. As for Mom, Richard, and Emily, they can keep their perfect family photos and their manipulative games. I've got something better: a real family, a clear conscience, and soon, a house with exactly one set of keys.
My eldest son's wife, Lulu, smirked as she said, "I bet you can play wonderfully." She probably intended to embarrass me at this family gathering. Lulu, with her only pride being her elite conservatory background, is desperate to claim the grand piano in my house. I, too, have reached the end of my patience. My name is Meyer Brown, and I just turned 60 this year. My husband has already passed away, and my 3 sons each have families of their own. I currently live alone in a mansion that is far too large for one person. Fortunately, my eldest son and his wife live nearby. It's comforting to know that my eldest son, Scott, wants me to consult with him if I have any problems. Perhaps it would be best to sell this mansion and move into an apartment or condominium more suitable for one person. But there's a reason I can't move. It's the grand piano that my late husband gifted me. As long as this piano is here, I don't think I'll ever leave this mansion. This grand piano is causing a lot of friction. Lulu is the one causing the problem. She's the kind of woman who flaunts her elite music university education, and I found her difficult to deal with since we first met. However, I didn't impose my opinion as she's the woman my son chose. Scott and Lulu got married hastily due to her pregnancy. But after the wedding, it turned out she was mistaken about being pregnant. I was dumbfounded, but my kind-hearted son, saying things like "everyone makes mistakes," comforted her. Men don't understand the ulterior motives that women can have. I think Lulu really wanted to marry Scott. I don't mean to boast as a mother, but Scott is tall, high-earning, and handsome. He's also very gentle and kind. I just can't bring myself to like her when I think she took advantage of Scott's kindness. It seems Lulu finds me difficult to deal with as well. She tries to act respectful to me as a mother-in-law, but I can see through her belittling me at heart. It probably comes from the fact that I play the piano as a hobby. I've never played the piano in front of her. She's challenged me several times by saying things like, "I would love to hear you play," but I've always turned her down. I play the piano in memory of my late husband. That's how it's always been and will continue to be. I didn't want to explain this to her over and over. How could she laugh in such a sneering, mocking way and still sit in front of the piano? I'm truly fed up with being told this every time we meet. Last week, Lulu gave me a hard time again. It is comforting that we live close to each other, but it's a bit problematic because we share the same neighbors. Lulu loves gossip and has a habit of spreading baseless rumors. When she and Scott just got married, she told the neighbors that I was strongly against the marriage and that she had a miscarriage due to the stress, which was a complete fabrication. She was never pregnant in the first place, and a miscarriage was impossible. She was trying to portray herself as a tragic heroine by making me out to be the villain. Lulu, aren't you spreading lies about me to the neighbors? Even though they were newly married, I found it impossible to turn a blind eye to this. I confronted her. Lulu looked a tad guilty but eventually seemed to brazen it out with her typical smirk playing around her lips. "Mother-in-law, this is so unfair. I don't know where you heard such rumors, but it's unfair to trust the words of others more than you trust me. Am I not a part of the family yet? The slick-tongued Lulu started to approach me, making it look as if I was at fault, even resorting to welling up her eyes with tears. I was stunned at her audacity, the nerve of her lying and evading the issue with such shameless boldness. My son Scott also came to know about this and gently chastised me, much to my chagrin. But considering this was happening so soon after their wedding, I eventually decided to let it slide and leave it unresolved. With a mother-in-law versus daughter-in-law dispute, I was always at a disadvantage. Rather than having another baseless rumor spread, I decided to endure this one. Then recently, a similar situation occurred. One morning, the neighborhood ladies who were chatting in front of the house quickly changed their expressions as soon as they saw me. From their reactions, I had a hunch that something had happened. It was the exact same response as before. "Good morning," I greeted them, and they dispersed like startled spiders. I felt that another strange rumor was being circulated. As soon as I returned home, I reached out to the neighbor I was most friendly with. "I'm sorry for calling so early in the morning." While explaining the incident, I asked my friend if another strange rumor about me was being spread. She hesitated but then informed me about the rumor, that I was responsible for shortening my husband's life. The baseless gossip detailed that I had a penchant for extravagance and that my husband had to continue working even after his retirement, leading to his death from overwork. But my husband had already passed away by the time Lulu became my daughter-in-law. She shouldn't have any basis to speak about him. Upon hearing my explanation, my friend agreed with me. She promised to help clear up the misunderstanding with the neighbors, giving me some relief. I felt that the spread of the rumor would be prevented. However, once I was relieved, my anger toward Lulu started bubbling up again. After her marriage, Lulu quit her job to become a full-time housewife. She seemed bored during the day, so she'd often gather the young neighborhood wives and engage in gossip. She probably used some made-up rumor about me as fodder for their daily chit-chat. The fact that she used my dear late husband for entertainment was unbearable. I finished breakfast and decided to pay a visit to my eldest son's home. I arrived at Scott's house around 9:30 am. Scott had already left for work. When I called out from the front door, Lulu, with her hair all disheveled, appeared from the bedroom. "What, Lulu? You just woke up?" I was taken aback and raised my voice unintentionally. "May, my mother-in-law, it's quite inconvenient if you come over without informing me beforehand. What's the matter so early in the morning?" Lulu, just woken up and seemingly grumpy, muttered her complaints. The living room was a mess, clearly not well cleaned. Even though I lived close by, I try not to interfere with my son and daughter-in-law's life and rarely visit their home. However, the current situation is unbearable. "I'm sorry I didn't get in touch. It was an emergency situation. I apologize." After offering an apology for not getting in touch, I got down to the matter at hand. "Couldn't you have resolved it over the phone? Why bother coming all the way here?" She seemed profoundly bothered by my visit. She sat deep into the couch in her pajamas, crossing her legs. It almost felt like she was looking down on me. Standing in front of Lulu, I suppressed the anger swelling up inside of me. I cautiously asked her about the rumor without raising my voice. Then she snorted. "Oh, that. Aloha. Could you please explain what you mean? I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't spread strange rumors." "Huh, but it's the truth, isn't it?" Lulu grinned again, stating her point. "On what basis are you claiming such a thing?" I lost my cool due to her attitude, and my tone got harsher, yet she remained unperturbed. "The grand piano is the proof. You pestered your husband to get it for you, didn't you? I've never seen you playing it." "Although," Lulu insinuated that I had whimsically made my husband buy a grand piano that I didn't even play. She understood the value of that piano. Of course, being a music college graduate, she would. "Don't you think it's a sheer waste to beg for a piano that you can't even play?" I'm starting to feel sorry for my father-in-law. "Although," Lulu completely mocked me. I was at a loss for words due to her audacity. Seeing me silent, she laughed. "Can't rebut because it's true." I found it impossible to discuss my precious memories of my husband with this woman. It felt as if our cherished memories would be tarnished, so I could do nothing but stay silent. Going silent when the going gets tough, I stood up from the sofa and said to Lulu, "Sorry for disturbing you." She laughed in a victorious manner. As I exited the living room, her high-pitched laughter pierced my back. I felt frustrated and tearful when I got home. Since that rumor incident, I've been keeping a distance from my eldest son and his wife. Honestly, I don't want to see Lulu ever again. I do feel sorry for my son Scott. However, thinking about my son being stuck in the middle of this mother-in-law and daughter-in-law issue and struggling, I believe that the best solution is for me not to approach Lulu. Regardless of how much you try to avoid, there are times when avoidance isn't possible. Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's Day are such times. On top of that, this year I will be turning 60. Scott called to celebrate my milestone birthday. My other sons and their wives, living out of state in places like Texas and Minnesota, seem to be coming home as well. They are planning to gather all the relatives, including my husband's sister, to celebrate my 60th birthday. I am truly happy to see my out-of-state children, their spouses, and my grandchildren after such a long time. I have no choice but to turn a blind eye to Lulu just for this day. I kept telling myself that. From the day before the birthday celebration, the grandchildren living out of state started returning home one after another, making the house bustling with activity. Usually being alone, the sudden increase in people almost made my head spin. The grandkids were all lively, running around the mansion. Among them, one girl, the daughter of my second son, quietly gazed at my piano. "Do you like the piano?" I asked. My granddaughter nodded. I remembered being consulted by my daughter-in-law about her being shy and reserved. Apparently, she was having trouble making friends even in kindergarten, which was a cause for concern. "Do you want to try playing?" At my words, my granddaughter's face lit up brightly. As I opened the lid of the piano, she reached out hesitantly. When I sat her on the chair, she asked in a tiny voice, "Can I play it?" "Of course, go ahead." My granddaughter pressed a key with her small finger, and a beautiful sound echoed. The spreading sound seemed to surprise her, and she repeated pressing the keys many times, closing her eyes to feel the spread and echo of the sound. Looking at her side profile, I thought I wouldn't mind leaving the piano to this girl. Hearing the sound of the piano, my daughter-in-law appeared, saying, "Sorry, mother-in-law." Seeing her own mother suddenly appear, my granddaughter seemed surprised, returning from her world of sound. "It seems like she likes the piano. Is she taking piano lessons?" I asked my daughter-in-law. She replied that they hadn't started her on piano lessons yet as they couldn't afford it. Indeed, my second son's family had many kids. They were raising 5 children. It must be true that they are financially strained. "I see, you should rely on me more. Don't hesitate." My daughter-in-law nodded happily at my words and bowed her head, saying thank you. I wished Lulu was a bit like her. "I was wondering who was playing," Lulu said loudly as she entered the room without hesitation. She glanced at my granddaughter sitting at the piano and scolded, "It's not a toy. It's not a piano for a child to touch. You don't know its value and you can't play it, you audacious child." Lulu attempted to push my granddaughter away from the piano. My granddaughter, thinking she was being scolded, got off the chair with a scared look and hid behind my daughter-in-law. "This piano is not for anyone but musicalites like me to touch. It's not a toy for children and certainly not for the elderly either." Her last statement was likely a sarcastic remark aimed at me. My daughter-in-law quietly bowed to Lulu and took my granddaughter to the yard. Lulu, who had been watching them leave with her arms crossed, tried to sit on the now empty chair in front of the piano. I hastily closed the lid of the piano. I really didn't want her touching my precious piano. It was a spur-of-the-moment reaction, and Lulu glared at me. "This piano holds precious memories with my husband. I don't want someone who would push a child aside to play it to touch it. I'm sorry." Facing Lulu's glare, I smiled sweetly. She clicked her tongue. She must have felt my strong will to not let her play. "Let me be frank since it's a good opportunity. This piano is wasted on you, mother-in-law. Don't you think it'd be more fitting for someone like me? I'd be happy to take it off your hands." Her eyes did not reflect the joviality of her words. It was clear that Lulu was serious. The next night, a party was held to celebrate my 60th birthday with all the relatives gathering. It had been a long time since everyone had come back home. Apart from my eldest son and his wife, my children and their spouses were at the forefront organizing a grand celebration for my milestone birthday. It was a bit embarrassing to put on the red cardigan they gifted me, but being celebrated by everyone was much more pleasant than I had anticipated. The celebration was made even more lively with a musical gift from my grandchildren. As everyone clapped at the end of the grandchildren's performance, Lulu suddenly chimed in, "That's right, let's have the mother-in-law play the piano." Her suggestion seemed spur of the moment, but I could tell she had been waiting for this opportunity to embarrass me. At Lulu's words, my sons joined in. We've never heard you play. I had only played the piano when it was just my husband and me. My children had never heard me perform. With such a marvelous piano in your possession, mother-in-law, you must be quite the player, Lulu said with her signature smirk. I would only be a displeasure to your ears, and it'd be embarrassing to perform during such a celebration. I tried to escape the situation with a harmless brush-off, but Lulu kept pressing on. Oh, so you've got such an expensive piano but can't play. That would mean you're quite the spendthrift. Guess the rumors were true, huh? At her continual taunts, even my eldest son, normally quite reserved, raised his voice. Hey now. But Lulu was not one to be quieted by such words. Scott looked at me with a troubled expression. I suppose it can't be helped. I'll make an exception today. Unable to bear seeing my son's troubled face, I started walking towards the piano. A quick patter of small footsteps followed, and my granddaughter, who loved the piano, clung to my side. She was clearly looking forward to hearing me play, her cheeks slightly flushed with anticipation. I wonder what kind of performance it will be. 3 blind mice at best, I assume, Lulu sneered. As I opened the piano lid and took my seat, her attitude caused the daughters-in-law to furrow their brows. Lulu was not particularly liked among them. She always took full advantage of her status as the wife of the eldest son, often looking down on the others. The piano keys, which I hadn't touched in a while, felt cold and comforting. Since I had it tuned regularly, the piano was always ready to be played. After warming up my wrists, I let my fingers dance across the keys. The first piece I chose was Chopin's Ballade No. 4 in F minor, Op. 52. From its serene beginning to the technically demanding parts, it is a challenging piece. Lulu appeared to recognize the piece as soon as I started playing and froze with a shocked expression on her face. Playing the piano after a long time somehow made all the unpleasant things feel irrelevant. I played several technically challenging pieces my husband loved and ended with a jazz arrangement of a popular cartoon theme song that my children loved. The moment all the performances were over, my entire family cheered and applauded me. My little granddaughter wrapped her arms around my knee excitedly exclaiming, "Awesome, awesome." The only one who seemed discontent among the relatives was Lulu. I flashed her a warm smile. So it was true that Mom was a pianist. I thought Dad was joking. My eldest son Scott commented with a hint of excitement in his voice. I had made sure that my children, especially Scott, would never discover that I was a pianist. After graduating from the Vienna Conservatory, I had started my journey as a pianist. That's when I met my husband and gave birth to Scott. When my mother-in-law forced me to choose between the piano and my husband, I chose my husband and Scott after much anguish. To ensure that Scott wouldn't feel burdened by this, my husband and I hid this truth. After I declared I would never touch the piano again, my husband bought this piano for me, asking that I play only for him. I later found out that my mother-in-law also played a role in purchasing the piano. It seemed they bought this piano, replacing the dream they had taken away from me. To me, this piano was a precious item that affirmed the bond with my husband and the love from my mother-in-law. I had no intention of handing it over to someone who merely desired its monetary value. By the way, I don't think I've ever heard Lulu play. Mom, would it be okay if Lulu played a piece? Scott asked me. What? Isn't Lulu a graduate from a top music school? You've never heard her play? I was somewhat surprised by Scott's words. Then I remembered. There's no piano at Scott and Lulu's house. That did seem unusual. Lulu, would you mind playing something? I'd love to hear it too. I stood up from the chair in front of the piano, intending to let Lulu take my place, but Lulu didn't sit down. Just the other day, she was leaning back comfortably in this chair, and now she seemed to recoil in fear. She was pale. I'm not feeling well today, she excused herself, trying to escape the situation. Not feeling well, after all that food and drink, or is there another reason you can't play the piano? I couldn't believe it and decided to confront her. Lulu mumbled some excuses. You wouldn't lie about graduating from a top music school, would you? Lulu flinched at my words. What? Was I right? Have you been lying about everything except the pregnancy? I unintentionally raised my voice. Lulu's face turned pale. She looked like she was about to faint. You're not telling me you lied about graduating from a top music school. Scott also questioned Lulu, seemingly surprised. Lulu fell silent as if she had forgotten how to speak. Our youngest 3-year-old grandchild toddled over, pulling out the leaflet from Lulu's back pocket. She handed it to me innocently, saying, "Here." Maybe she was trying to diffuse the tension in her own small way. I smiled at her, saying thank you, and took the leaflet, only to be shocked. The leaflet was advertising a high-priced used piano purchase service. The likely phone-confirmed purchase price was scribbled on the leaflet in ballpoint pen. "Lulu, you were planning to sell my piano?" I couldn't hold it back anymore. I yelled at Lulu and showed the leaflet to the relatives. The whole family peered at the leaflet, staring at Lulu in disbelief. She seemed unable to bear their gaze and ran home as if escaping. The person who suffered the most from this commotion was my eldest son, Scott. The wife he had always believed in had been proven to be a big liar. We couldn't find the right words to comfort Scott. Afterwards, Scott and Lulu divorced. It seemed that Scott had reached his limit with Lulu's incessant lies. Moreover, Lulu had a habit of spending extravagantly and was secretly in deep debt. She apparently planned to repay the debt with the money from selling my piano. Once Scott found out about Lulu's debt repayment plan, he immediately filed for divorce. Lulu, who had lived a married life full of lies, was now jobless and supposedly hiding out at her parents' home. I hear debt collectors are visiting her parents' house daily. I decided to open a small piano school afterwards. Some neighborhood kids are attending. The piano seems to emit a joyous sound when played by the children. Apparently, my granddaughter has also started taking piano lessons. After hearing me play, the wife of the second son was so moved that she decided to have her child learn the piano. I'm subsidizing the monthly piano lessons. The once quiet mansion is now filled with the voices of children, becoming quite lively. I believe my husband would be delighted. My in-laws dumped my bedridden, mute sister-in-law on me and went on vacation to Hawaii. Just before they left, my husband Jack said, "Taking care of her is your job. Don't slack off." As soon as Jack and his family left, my sister-in-law sat up and said, "Okay, let's get going too." I'm Lisa, 29 years old. As a teenager, I dreamed of becoming a pop star, but eventually realized it was a fleeting dream. And before I knew it, I was in my late 20s. I started dating Jack, whom I had met through a friend because my mother, with whom I live, kept asking when she would see her grandchild. Talking to Jack, I found out that he too had once dreamed of entering the entertainment industry when he was young. Despite our past aspirations, Jack now works at a prestigious trading company with its headquarters in downtown Manhattan. After graduating from college, I worked at a bank until I got married and quit. One day, Jack and I went to his parents' house. Jack has a younger sister named Lucy who caught a fever when she was a child. Her mother thought it was just a common cold, but when the fever didn't subside, they took her to a doctor and found out it was encephalitis caused by influenza. It was already too late, and due to the prolonged high fever, Lucy was left with brain damage and became bedridden. Furthermore, the high fever left lingering effects on the part of her brain that controls speech, leaving her unable to speak. My mother-in-law was the one who took care of Lucy for the most part. For some reason, Lucy and I got along well, and I always looked forward to visiting Jack's family. Lucy couldn't converse verbally, so she used sign language. After becoming close with Lucy, I naturally picked up sign language as well. One day, I signed to Lucy, "We're like best friends who've known each other forever, aren't we?" To which she replied, "Yes, we are. Let's stay close friends forever." I responded, "Of course we will." However, my mother-in-law, who was the complete opposite of Lucy, was always sarcastic towards me. Jack and I live in a condo about a 30-minute drive from his parents' house. But occasionally my mother-in-law would drive over unannounced and start nitpicking on me. "Jackie's shoes are filthy. If a man's shoes are dirty, it reflects poorly on his work. It's your responsibility to keep them clean," she would say. My mother-in-law always referred to Jack as Jackie. "Make sure you always fold the laundry neatly. If you don't, Jackie will be in a bad mood. No matter how late Jackie gets home, you must never go to bed before him, even if Jackie says it's okay for you to go to bed first." My mother-in-law would say such old-fashioned things. Jack, while we were dating and initially after we got married, was very kind and never disagreed with me. For example, if I said I wasn't feeling well and asked him to have dinner outside, he would readily agree. If I saw a designer bag I liked, he would buy it for me the following month. However, about a year after we got married, Jack started to change, or perhaps he returned to his original self. He started coming home late from work, always reeking of alcohol. Jack's been increasingly busy on Saturdays and Sundays, always claiming that work kept him away from home. When he would occasionally visit his parents' home, he would decline my requests to join him, which was odd. One day, I decided to confront him about it. "Jack, you've become so distant lately. It feels like you're a completely different person," I said. Jack glared at me for a moment, then replied, "That's not true. You're overthinking things." "I don't think I am," I retorted. "You barely talk to me anymore." "I told you, you're overthinking it. Stop bringing this up," he said, walking away to take a shower, ending the conversation. One day, Jack surprised me by saying, "This Sunday, I'm going home." "What are you going to do?" I was taken aback as Jack had previously always refused my company on such visits. "Wait, I can come with you this time?" I asked. "That's why I'm asking." "Well, of course, I'll come then. I'd like to see Lucy too," I added. Jack frowned a bit and said, "You and Lucy seem to get along really well, huh?" "Yes, we do. It feels like we've been best friends forever," I responded, noticing Jack's slight grimace at my words. On Sunday, I drove us to Jack's family home in Nebraska. We stopped at a bakery along the way to buy some pastries as a gift. Jack's mother always has a frown when she sees me, but she would light up upon receiving the pastries. When we arrived, his mother came to greet us as usual. She frowned at my sight, almost as if she was not happy to see me. "Mother-in-law, please have some of these," I said, handing her the pastries. She snatched them from me and peered inside before replying. "Is it these pastries again? They're getting boring. But since you insist, I'll have them." Her face lit up like a child receiving a toy. "Is father around today?" he asked. Jack's father was elderly but still worked actively. "He's out at a meeting." "Why?" "Did you need something?" she asked. "No, not really. I just had something I wanted to talk about with him," Jack replied. I hadn't heard anything about this from Jack. "What's going on?" "Did you have something to tell your father?" I asked. Jack snapped, "It's none of your business." "What do you mean? We're a married couple, aren't we?" I pressed. "Can you just stop nagging?" Jack retorted, and his mother chimed in, "Exactly. If Jack doesn't want to tell you something, you shouldn't be prying." I decided not to respond, knowing that arguing with her would be fruitless. Just then, Jack's sister appeared. "Oh, Jack, you're here," she said. "Perfect timing, sis. I have something to discuss," Jack started. "What is it?" she asked. "I can take a long vacation next month. I was thinking about a family trip to Hawaii. How about you, sis?" Jack proposed. "I'll pass. I don't have a passport," she replied. I was taken aback. Jack, who was always busy with work and rarely took time off, was suggesting a trip to Hawaii. "Jack, is everything all right with your job?" "I'm only suggesting this trip because my work's going fine," he replied. My mother-in-law frowned deeply at my interference. "You shouldn't meddle with decisions Jack has made. You're really nosy, aren't you?" "That's right," Jack added. "And Lisa, the reason I asked you here today is because I want you to take care of Lucy while we're on vacation." I was momentarily taken aback, but then realized that staying here with Lucy would be much more enjoyable than going on a trip to Hawaii with my mother-in-law. "Okay, I will take care of Lucy, but if that was the case, you didn't need to bring me all the way here to tell me that, did you?" "I figured if I told you in front of my mother, you'd understand quicker," Jack replied. He must have assumed I'd resist when I found out I couldn't go to Hawaii. And if I did, he wanted my mother-in-law to forcefully convince me. It was clear to me that this was his intent. I left the room, feeling dumbfounded, and headed to Lucy's room. Lucy looked delighted to see me. "It's been a while. How have you been?" "I'm good. What brings you here today?" Jack asked me to come with him to our parents' house, so I did. But it's strange. Before, whenever Jack came here, he used to tell me I couldn't come along. My brother is definitely hiding something. He's always been secretive. So apparently he's going to Hawaii next month, but I'll be staying back. I think that's better, though. I said this with a smile, and Lucy replied with a grin. "In that case, you should come over and stay here." "Sure, I'll do that." After that, Lucy and I had a great time chatting. I always wondered why Lucy and my mother-in-law were so different. About an hour later, Jack came to get me, and we headed home. At that time, Lucy gave me a slight wink and revealed a shocking truth and an even more shocking plan to me. A month later, on the day of the Hawaii trip, Jack and I went to his parents' house. Although I wasn't going to Hawaii, I brought my luggage to stay at my in-laws for a week with Lucy. I took the luggage to Lucy's room. "It's finally happening," Lucy said, flashing a playful grin. When I returned to the living room, everyone going to Hawaii was already there. It seemed that Jack's father wasn't going, as he wasn't present. As the departure time neared, the entire family, with Jack's voice rising above the rest, chimed in, "Taking care of Lucy is your job. Don't slack off." Even my mother-in-law added, "Please get along well with Lucy. It's better for you to stay here, isn't it? If anything happens to Lucy, it's all your fault. We'll hold you responsible." It was absurd for someone about to abandon their immobile sister for a vacation in Hawaii to say these words, but I did not react at all. It didn't matter what Jack said. I wasn't in the mood to see them off, so I returned to Lucy's room. At that very moment, Lucy sprang up energetically from her bed and called out to me, "Come on, let's get going." This echoed the conversation we'd had just the other day when Lucy confessed, I can actually walk. And with walking comes the ability to converse." "Since when?" I asked. "Since last year, I suppose." "Why have you been hiding this from the rest of the family?" With that, Lucy began sharing an unexpected tale. "Actually, my father and mother are both remarried. I'm my dad's child from his previous marriage, and my sister and brother are from my mom's side." I was surprised, but considering how distant and cold my mother-in-law usually was towards Lucy, I couldn't help but think I thought so. "Is that so?" "Yeah, my mom despises me, and I didn't want to talk to her, so I pretended that I couldn't." "And your father?" "Dad knows everything. He's always on my side." "I see. That's why regarding this trip to Hawaii, I'm thinking we should go too." "Huh? What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm planning to go to Hawaii on the same day as them. We'll even stay at the same resort," Lucy said with a sparkle in her eye, which caught me completely off guard. "What? I'd be thrilled to go to Hawaii with you, Lucy, but do you even have a passport?" "Of course. I secretly got my passport last month. And don't worry about the expenses. My dad is covering our plane tickets and the resort, including yours." "I see. I'm really looking forward to this." And that's how we ended up here today. When Lucy and I arrived at the airport via taxi, my father-in-law was there waiting to see us off. "Lisa, it's been a while. I know it must be surprising, but I hope you enjoy the trip to Hawaii." "Thank you, father-in-law. I feel guilty for all the plane tickets and resort fees you've covered." "Huh, don't worry about it. As long as you two have fun, I'm happy." "Thank you for your kindness." After that, we boarded a plane from a different airline than my husband's family. We landed in Hawaii early in the morning, took a taxi from the airport, and checked into the resort hotel. Lucy and I were sharing a room. I mentioned to Lucy, "Your father seems pretty well-traveled." "Yeah, he's been on several international business trips. He's even been to Hawaii a few times." "So what's the plan?" "I'm guessing my mom and everyone will dine at the restaurant here tonight. I'm thinking of surprising them." "That sounds like fun. I'm excited. Should we get some rest to recover from jet lag?" "That sounds like a good idea. I couldn't sleep at all on the plane." After taking the shower, we climbed into bed and quickly fell asleep. We woke up around late afternoon, close to 4 o'clock. Lucy was already awake, starting to wear makeup. "I'm sorry I slept too much." "No, don't worry about it. I just woke up too." We really had a good sleep, didn't we? Fully recharged and ready for our battle. Around 7 o'clock, I said to Lucy, "I'll go and check out the restaurant." As I was looking for Jack and his party from the shadows near the entrance of the restaurant, I found them dining joyfully in a far-off spot. I was too far away from them, so I decided to venture deeper into the restaurant. From my position, all I could see was their backs, and it was hard to identify anyone. But I spotted the back of a young woman that I didn't recognize. There wasn't any such woman when they had left Jack's parents' house. Upon seeing this, I was taken aback, nearly letting out a loud gasp, but I managed to suppress it. When I strained my ears, I could intermittently hear Jack and my mother-in-law's voices. "I'm glad it's not that woman today." "Yeah, I really drew the short straw. She's tainted my family record. If only we had an elegant daughter like her from the start." I want to divorce her and start fresh soon, try to find a reason for the divorce and extract a hefty alimony from that woman. Even without a cause for the divorce, it's fine. I can fabricate as many as I want. She's so bad that I want to throw her in the trash. I want to see my grandchild from you and her soon, my mother-in-law said, giving the woman a smile that she had never shown me before. I was driven by the urge to step forward and see the woman's face. But I held it in, returning to my room and telling Lucy. That took a while. I'm sorry, I saw something shocking. Jack brought a woman that I've never seen before. What? I was about to scream. Jack and my mother-in-law were continuously bad-mouthing me, and Jack even said he would find a reason for divorce. That's terrible. Jack called me a bad catch, but seeing him with another woman, I felt relieved. Now I can divorce him outright. That's a good thing. Shall we make our entrance then? Lucy and I headed towards the restaurant hall. When we entered the restaurant, we requested to sit near Jack's table and were able to get a seat quite close to them. They didn't notice our arrival. As we were sitting quite close, we could hear their conversation, still filled with derogatory comments about me. I was amazed and ended up giving a bitter smile at how they could badmouth me indefinitely. Seeing my face, Lucy gave a nod with a smile. That was a cue for us to begin our counterattack. I stood up from my seat, stepped forward towards Jack, and shouted, "Are you all having a good time?" I'll never forget the look on Jack and my mother-in-law's faces at that moment. Their mouths agape and eyes wide open, they froze for a few seconds. After a few seconds, my mother-in-law finally spoke. "Why are you here, and how did Lucy get here without a wheelchair?" At her words, Lucy stood up, gave my mother-in-law a smile, and said, "I don't need a wheelchair." Once again, they were stunned. "Thanks to you, my body and speech have returned to normal. I must have caused you quite a bit of trouble for a long time." "Lucy, when did you regain your ability to speak?" "I wonder when that was. Maybe last year." "Then why did you hide it until now?" "Because it was better if you guys continued to believe that I couldn't speak. You and Jack were speaking ill of me earlier, weren't you?" My mother-in-law's face turned pale in an instant. "What do you mean?" she asked. "Yeah, we weren't saying anything bad about you, Lisa," Jack retorted. "That won't work. I recorded everything on my phone. Do you want me to play it back right now?" I countered. My mother-in-law fell silent, but Jack stood up. "Lisa, you've been causing me trouble all this time, and now you're making these outrageous claims," he barked. Jack was the one making absurd claims, so I retaliated. "Once I return back home, I'll immediately contact my lawyer to initiate our divorce proceedings. You can't deny the fact that you're on vacation abroad with another woman. Plus, you described getting with me as drawing a blank lottery ticket, so I expect you to demonstrate sincerity by paying a hefty compensation for that comment." At my words, my mother-in-law seemed to acknowledge her defeat, and her attitude abruptly changed. "Lisa dear, I really like you. Please try to get along with Jack." "This woman is not involved with Jack," she pleaded. "I'm sorry, but I can't do that. Since I am a blank lottery ticket, I cannot live with Jack. Please enjoy your time with this woman. Oh, and I might also seek compensation from her." "Isn't that exciting?" I smirked. The woman in question turned pale and began to tremble upon hearing my words. Unfazed by the public gaze, Jack fell to his knees and pleaded, "Lisa, I beg you, don't make this a big deal. My company has strict rules about this," he implored. "What's that? You don't sound sorry at all," I replied. Jack appeared taken aback, then tried again. "Lisa, I beg you, forgive me. If my company finds out, I'll lose my job," he confessed. "Though your plea sounds better now, I will never forgive you. You are married, and yet here you are on an overseas trip with another woman," I said firmly. Upon hearing my words, my mother-in-law also fell to her knees next to Jack, pleading, "Please forgive my son," she implored, tears streaming down her face. By this time, all the other customers were watching us, and the restaurant manager started walking towards our table. Seeing this, I got up and said, "Well, Lucy and I will head back to our room. You all enjoy your Hawaiian vacation. I guess things will get a bit difficult when you get back home." Hearing this, Jack, crying, shouted at the top of his lungs, "Please forgive me. I can't afford to pay any compensation." At his loud outburst, the restaurant manager frowned, instructed something to a nearby staff member, and then briskly told Jack something. It was a polite way of telling him that he was disturbing the other guests and needed to leave. However, Jack was taken aback, not understanding the manager's words. Soon, two burly security guards arrived and hauled Jack away. Jack was sobbing and struggling, but he was no match for the two bulky men. My mother-in-law and the woman were dumbfounded, unable to utter a word. While Lucy and I were also surprised by the turn of events, I thought Jack got what he deserved. A week later, Lucy and I returned home. Jack was quickly released and seemed to have returned to his room. However, I later heard that he had been in a state of shock since returning to his room and had kept to himself until the end of the trip. The day after I returned home, I went to the law firm where my old college friend worked to request a divorce proceeding. Unfortunately, my friend was not present, but a female lawyer was assigned to me who was very easy to talk to, and I was able to explain everything that had happened. After listening to my story, she assured me that a divorce was possible, that I could claim alimony, and that she would investigate the woman who was with Jack in Hawaii before determining whether I could claim alimony from her as well. A month later, the female lawyer contacted me and informed me that it had been proven that Jack had been dating the other woman for about 6 months. Hence, she said it was possible for me to demand alimony from this woman too. I requested the female lawyer to please squeeze as much alimony as you can from Jack and his woman. She smiled and nodded. 2 months later, I was officially divorced, and into my bank account was deposited the alimony from the two. I mumbled as I saw the amount, and that's karma for calling me a blank lottery ticket. 3 months later, Jack and my mother-in-law suddenly visited my place. Despite it being only 3 months, they had lost a lot of weight and looked completely haggard. I asked them, "What do you want?" "I don't want to see your faces." Jack replied in a thin voice, "I'm sorry. Could you lend me some money? I've lost my job, and the woman ran away. I don't even have money for food." My mother-in-law also spoke in a whisper, "I've divorced my husband too. I don't have money. Please, I beg you." My mother-in-law was in tears. I responded, "Too bad. I have absolutely no obligation to help you, and even if I did, I would never help you guys out. Now please leave." After they left, I sprinkled a large amount of salt at my entrance to get rid of the bad energy from my house. My name is Riza, and I'm a 27-year-old office worker at a food processing company. I've been married for 3 years. I met my husband Georgie, who's the same age as me, through a friend during our college days. After getting married, we decided to live together in an apartment close to my childhood home. Since my parents' house is out of state, I have to drive 2 hours to visit them, but I make it a point to see them every few months. Each time I do, I also visit the facility where my beloved grandmother, Cindy, lives. Taking care of Cindy, who has dementia, began for me before I got married. Mostly, it was my part-time working mother, Violet, who took care of Cindy. Caring for someone with dementia is incredibly challenging. There were times when I had to take over for an exhausted Violet, crying as I helped Cindy in the bathroom. As Cindy's dementia progressed, a gloom hung over our home. Cindy gradually forgot how to smile, and Violet and I often clashed over her care. Despite these challenges, several years later, as I was leaving home to get married, Cindy moved into a care facility. This was something she wanted. One reason I had been reluctant to have her stay in a facility was because of my own prejudices. I thought it was sad to put her in a facility, but when I actually visited, I was surprised. Soon, I realized my perception was wrong. The facility was bright and clean, with professional staff working efficiently. Most importantly, everyone there was smiling, and Cindy looked truly happy. Seeing this, we realized as a family that this was the best choice, even though it felt bittersweet. I wish we all could have continued in this peaceful state until Cindy's final days, but my mother-in-law, Rachel, had even more prejudice against care facilities than I used to. Every time we met, she would say things like, "Poor Cindy, isn't that abuse? A facility is like a prison," and other derogatory remarks with a nasty smile. Her words were not out of concern for Cindy, but rather to attack me. I would retort, "That's right, so please don't ask me to take care of you, Rachel. It would be shameless to be cared for by someone you've criticized like this." This would often anger her. Georgie always sided with me, even considering cutting ties if her behavior got too bad. Still, we maintained limited contact, meeting only for Christmas and family gatherings. After years of this strained relationship, I received a call from Violet saying she had something to show me at her house. I was curious about what it could be. Violet showed me bundles of diaries. They were Cindy's, spanning decades. The earliest entries were from long ago, detailing the day I was born, my first steps, my first day of school, and how much she loved my grandfather when he passed away. Most entries were about ordinary days, but some mentioned how my teenage rebellious words hurt her. Reading them, I felt regret, sadness, and nostalgia. Unable to hold back tears, I read on until I found a shocking entry. It described how Cindy, in the early stages of dementia, had taken a train alone to visit my grandfather's grave. At that time, we didn't fully understand what dementia was, and she got lost, causing a big commotion. In her diary, Cindy wrote, "I was anxious. I worried about Riza especially. Her once beautiful handwriting had transformed into shaky, childlike scribbles." The last legible line read, "I need to be stronger." Reading that, Violet and I embraced and cried. She was scared, she was anxious. Only now did I understand how Cindy felt. After a good cry, Violet showed me these diaries. "You were the best friend to Cindy," she said, "and let me have it. I put it in a drawer in my bedroom closet and took great care of it. But something terrible happened regarding this notebook." The incident happened the year after I received the diary. Georgie and I were planning to visit Rachel's place for Christmas, which was a month away. One day before Christmas, I got a call from Rachel, asking me to come over alone. Given the unpleasant stories about Rachel, I consulted Georgie, who advised, "You better not go." But Rachel's intriguing words, "I have something nice to show you," piqued my curiosity, and I decided to go, with Georgie accompanying me. Since Rachel had insisted I come alone, I had Georgie wait in the car, and with a sense of alertness, I visited Rachel's house. As soon as we met, Rachel greeted me with a disturbing smile. "You've seen this, haven't you?" To my astonishment, what she proudly presented was Cindy's diary. I had never even mentioned its existence to Rachel, let alone shown it to her. "What? How? Why?" I stammered. I had kept it in a place that no one could find. My legs started shaking uncontrollably, barely able to stand despite my desire to appear calm. Rachel explained that she had borrowed the apartment key by pretending to be a relative of the owner, then sneaked into my place during my absence to find something incriminating. She found the bundle of diaries in the closet. "Closets have always been the place to hide important things, just as I thought," she said excitedly. Embarrassingly, I hadn't noticed the intrusion. Though my heart was far from calm, I tried to hide my panic and pressed Rachel to return the diary. "That makes you a thief, doesn't it? Oh, Rachel, have you stooped to thievery now? Please give it back." As I said this, Rachel replied with a disgustingly joyful smile. "They always took you, now so weak and vulnerable. This must be something very precious." Unable to bear it any longer, I called Georgie on my mobile phone, who I had told to come immediately if anything happened. Georgie rushed over from the car, which infuriated Rachel. "Riza, didn't I tell you to come alone?" "How could I come alone when I don't know what you're capable of, Mom?" "What's that you're holding?" Georgie retorted angrily. Ashamedly, "Please give it back." All I could do was cry out. But Rachel, with a malicious smile, began flipping through and reading aloud from the diary, reminiscent of middle school bullying. "What's this? Even a grade schooler could write better than this. Was Riza's grandmother really that stupid, or was it the illness? Oh, how dreadful. Diseases of the brain happen because of bad deeds, right?" Rachel read aloud from the part of the diary where Cindy was suffering from dementia, seemingly enjoying it. I was always ready to face off with her without resorting to such tactics. The way Rachel looked down on Cindy, using her weakness, was utterly despicable. "Stop. Give it back." Georgie, infuriated, was about to grab her when, to our horror, she plunged the diary into a pot of stew. "Oops, my hand slipped," Rachel exclaimed. It was clearly intentional, unforgivable. Georgie was screaming in rage, and I was beyond calm. What should I do? How should I punish her? While Georgie and Rachel argued, fueled by resentment and anger, I ran around the room searching for anything Rachel might cherish, anything that looked expensive. I didn't know her tastes, but I gathered jewelry, cosmetics, fur, and clothes. Rachel chased after me, but she couldn't match my pace, pleading as I grabbed as many valuable-looking items as I could and threw them into the pouring rain in the garden, soaking them in rainwater and mud. But my anger wasn't quenched. Next, I grabbed the pot and hurled its contents at Rachel. It had cooled a bit but was still slightly hot. What happened to Rachel was none of my concern. I retrieved the diary, but it was mostly ruined from being soaked in stew. Seeing this, I screamed and threw everything I could find in the fridge and cupboards. I wreaked havoc in every way possible. How much time had passed, I didn't know, but the place looked like a battlefield. I started to calm down, then turned to Rachel and said, "Rachel, you're lucky you weren't hurt. Or should I make you so injured you'll need care for the rest of your life?" "Yes, that sounds good." "Oh, but I won't care for you. Spend your remaining years alone. Or maybe caring for you might be fun. I could do whatever I want, right?" "Yes, let's do that." Hearing this, Rachel crawled around whimpering, "Eek," like a frog. Later, Georgie told me I had a creepy smile and that he had never seen me like that before. I knew my wife was strong-willed, but I never imagined she'd become that way when angry. I couldn't stop her while she was raging, so I just let her be until she was done. I thought if the neighbors heard and called the police, we could somehow explain it, Georgie said. "That's enough for now," he said, dragging me to the car. However, Rachel, misunderstanding the situation, clung to Georgie. "Georgie, you're on my side, right? You saw it. Violence is scary," she pleaded. But Georgie shook her off briskly, repulsed. "Disgusting. Don't touch me. I was appalled by your past actions, but this time I'm utterly disgusted. I hate you, Mom, as a person now." After cutting ties with Rachel, Georgie pushed me into the car and got into the driver's seat. I was in a daze, holding the ruined diary, unable to do anything else, shaking uncontrollably, tears streaming down my face. I felt nauseous and, failing to hold it back, ended up vomiting on Rachel, who was ranting outside the car. Covered in vomit, Rachel screamed, "Risa, I'll never forgive you, even if you apologize." But Georgie retorted, "Who's apologizing? Even if Mom does, we're never seeing her again." Hearing that, I felt a sense of liberation, realizing I didn't have to see the person who trampled not only on my life, but also on Cindy's. Georgie's stance of abandoning the obligatory relationship because I was his wife made my heart lighter. However, the diary couldn't be restored to its original state. After returning home, I carefully cleaned and dried it. Some pages could be turned, but most of it was wavy and unreadable. Overwhelmed with sadness and emptiness, I decided to cherish the parts that remained intact. Georgie's increased kindness helped me start to recover. Later, when we raised a complaint to the apartment owner about Rachel's break-in, it turned out she had entered months ago, which left us speechless at her thieving skills. Georgie said, "I don't ever want to deal with that criminal again, except maybe at her funeral." Crying, but since our apartment location was known, we couldn't risk future incidents. We considered moving and in the meantime added more locks to our apartment, installed an alarm system that rings with vibration, and set up dummy cameras at the entrance and inside, with one real camera inside the house. Our security measures were extreme for a rental apartment, but we managed it with full support from the owner, as the burglary was due to their oversight. Regarding moving, Georgie had tough negotiations, ensuring we get support, so we had no financial worries. Despite my efforts, my stomach continued to hurt, so I ended up needing to visit the hospital. Seeing my condition, Georgie said, "We don't need this anymore," and removed the home phone, which almost exclusively received calls from Rachel. Since most of our communication with Violet was through mobile phones, we weren't worried, and it did help ease my mind. Georgie also wanted to apologize to my family, but I didn't want to cause unnecessary worry, so we held off on that instead. I suggested, "Then make me happy instead," which unexpectedly made him break down in tears. Watching him cry, I remembered something Cindy once said. "If you keep saying life is hard, only hard times will come. But if you say life is fun, fun times will find their way to you." If Cindy said it, maybe there's truth to it. With Georgie, I feel like it could come true. A month later, Georgie told me about a recent visit to my parents' house, a fact he initially withheld considering my mental state. After removing the home phone, Rachel had called him dozens of times. When she saw him, she clung to him again. He described her as pitiful and diminished, but she only spoke ill of me, asking, "You'll divorce that wife and come back home, right?" Seeing Rachel in that state, Georgie told my father-in-law, Sean, "I'm sorry, but I don't want to see my mom anymore. So Dad, please take care of Mom. Making her happy is your responsibility, just as making Risa happy is mine." In response, Sean quietly apologized. "I'm sorry for everything so far," and pulled Rachel away. When it was time to leave, Rachel was sitting on the floor crying bitterly. On the day I lashed out, Sean had taken his screaming Rachel to the hospital. Until now, Sean had always been the one to quietly say, "Sorry, Riza," after any conflicts with Rachel, giving off a sense of resignation in dealing with her volatile temperament. But this time, he seemed to realize something was wrong with his wife and decided to get her examined. At this point, the doctors hadn't given a definitive diagnosis, but it seemed like Rachel might be suffering from empty nest syndrome. She felt as if her son, whom she had raised with all her effort, had been taken away by some unknown daughter-in-law, like a mother bird overwhelmed by the emptiness of her nest. The current approach is to help her accept reality. We don't have children yet, but hearing this made me feel sorry for her. Georgie, sensing my sympathy, firmly said, "Riza, are you thinking of going easy on her? That's why I thought it'd be better not to talk about this. Whether it's illness or not, remember how many times we've been hurt by showing leniency. It's enough. I'm sorry." It seemed Georgie was much angrier than I was. Upon reflection, the act of breaking into our house to find faults in his wife, stealing and ruining a cherished diary, and even denigrating her grandmother is despicable, something you rarely see even in dramas. No matter how lonely a parent feels after their child's marriage, if my own parent did something like that, I'd reconsider our relationship. Rachel lost something important to her in exchange for destroying something precious to me. It's a significant price to pay, but if she can recognize the presence of Sean, her closest and most important person, maybe she can find happiness. Saying this might make Georgie accuse me of being too lenient again. But if Rachel treasures Sean, realizes her actions, and sincerely apologizes, maybe I could consider meeting her just once more. That day might never come, but she's still my husband's parent after all. However, right now, I feel like I might hit her if I saw her, so I really don't want to meet her for a while.